Best Big Brother and Son. Written by GemPiglin and read for you by Eleanor Elizabeth. Summary. Pepper and Peter go to Target for Halloween decorations. Flufftober 6. Candles, lanterns, and fairy lights. Are you sure about this? Sure, I haven't been there in a while. Pepper tugged a dark grey beanie over her head, pulling the coat around her. But what if you get recognised? Then there's no harm to it. Makes me seem more human. Peter nodded as they headed towards the large building. It was actually Pepper who suggested it when Peter had been talking about the ghost photoshoot trend, and his mother figure had suggested getting some decorations to decorate the penthouse along with Peter's room. He had already started browsing Amazon when she turned into the familiar Target parking lot. The AC immediately hit them as they wandered in, Pepper taking off her scarf and draping it around his neck, needling it out. Where to first? The teen held onto her hand and led her through the surprisingly not crowded store until he saw the first gleam of an orange and black shelf and heard the distant laughter of a skeleton lawn ornament. Behold, the Ween of Hallow area! Peter jumped forward and held his arms out in a behold motion, not unlike how Tony usually did it, before jumping off into the distance, drifting the cart around the corner with a look of pure excitement on his face. Pepper would have copied him if she could, but instead she just fondly rolled her eyes, choosing to slowly make her way down the long aisle with her own cart. Eventually, as she was picking up several boxes of fairy lights of different kinds so Peter could decide which one would be okay for his senses, said teenager skidded round the corner again, his cart almost full. "Pepper, look at all this stuff!" he nearly squealed as he gestured into the cart, having long since learned to just let the Starks buy things, since they didn't like holding back. "Wow, how much of the penthouse are you decorating?" "I got some from the balcony too." He reached into the cart and picked up a solar-powered outdoor lantern. "I found it in the outdoor section." "Well, where did you get that sense of style?" Pepper gushed proudly, patting his shoulder. At least someone in her family understood basic design. Peter flushed at the praise, holding onto her hand. "Come on!" She willingly followed, leaving their carts there for a moment while they went to the end of the aisle, only to see Peter pointing at a box in the children's area full of big squishmallows. "Can we get one for Morgan?" He was clearly nervous but relaxed when Pepper nodded, jogging over to the box and leaning forward to dig through. Pepper wandered back and began tugging on the carts to where Peter was, only to hear a fear-filled gasp behind her. She whipped around to see Peter running towards her and prying her hands from the cart with a concerned look on his face, continuing to pull them both to himself. Pepper sighed fondly. She knew Peter cared a lot about everyone, but it stepped up a lot since he figured out she was pregnant. He had been a lot more protective of her all of a sudden, but didn't know why until one day he was resting on Pepper's shoulder between her and Tony and felt something odd. He had been sensitive to vibrations and noise since the spider bite, so when he felt like Pepper's vibrations were off, he was immediately concerned, pausing Star Wars and focusing on his hearing, only to hear a tiny heartbeat when he leaned in. That was definitely a confusing conversation for the couple, who hadn't yet figured out anything was wrong. Peter finally picked up the red panda. "He's called Seth!" and set him gently onto the least full cart, patting his head before grabbing onto the cart again. "Are you not getting one for yourself?" Pepper asked, tilting her head when Peter looked confused. "I can get one?" "Sure, you love them." Peter looked embarrassed for a moment, but it quickly disappeared. "Plus, I'm sure baby Morgan would love to match with her brother." The teen suddenly lit up and practically teleported over to the box, diving in again and going deeper until his feet were no longer on the floor, thanks to his short height. "This one, I got it!" Pepper grinned at the excitement in her son's voice, watching as he kicked his legs a few times, but still didn't get up. "Are you okay, Pete?" "Mum, help!" She chuckled and put a hand on his shoulder to pull him back until his feet were on the floor again and he could stand on his own, looking frazzled like he'd just been woken up with an air horn and clutching a large black bat to his chest. "Thanks!" He put as much cheer into his voice as he could, slightly betrayed by a voice crack while casually heading to the cart so that she couldn't see his red face. "There's one more aisle that I want to go to," Pepper said, leading Peter away, who was pulling both of the weighty carts after battling Pepper away when she found out how weighty they both were. Eventually, they reached possibly the best aisle they ever had. Candles. Pepper dramatically inhaled, also doing the behold motion that seemed to run in the Stark family. "But I thought—" "Tony only banned candles in the main room and our room. He didn't say anything about my office." She winked, heading over to the Halloween scents. Peter wandered through the aisle after her. He hadn't really enjoyed candles much before the bite. He quite enjoyed them now. You'd think they'd be overwhelming for him, but they were a pleasant scent that he enjoyed, and if he was oversensitive, he used them to cover up all the other smells with something pleasant. He grabbed some different scents as he made his way through the aisle and grabbed a new incense holder with a cool design and some new sticks that he liked that they finally restocked. Maybe he could finally introduce Pepper to it, since she only ever really used candles. Finally, they made it to the checkout and laughed with the cashier, who paled slightly at the sight of their 2 full carts. He quickly realised who he was speaking to, but didn't seem to mind, holding a casual conversation with the two, though Peter was mostly shy and packing the bags back into the carts, handing Pepper their drinks to hold. The employee looked between the pair and the heavy carts and asked if they needed help getting everything into the car, which Pepper was about to deny, but Peter quickly accepted. His car packing skills weren't the best, and he didn't want Pepper trying to help with the heavy lifting. His mom rolled her eyes and thanked the employee profusely, eventually managing to lead Peter into the parking lot. Needless to say, she was glad that Peter had accepted the offer as soon as she got to the car and sagged into the heated seat, suddenly exhausted, her feet sore even in her sneakers. "Are you okay, Mom?" Peter leaned forward and placed one hand between Pepper's neck and her back to support her where it often ached, and the other hand on her stomach gently, as if soothing Morgan and telling her to settle down. "Yeah, thanks, hun," she smiled tiredly. "Rest for a minute while we wait. I'll let Tony know what's happening." Peter reached over and switched the car on so it could warm up in the cold autumnal air, setting classical music on quietly so that Pepper would only just be able to hear. He was going to do his best to make sure Pepper was as comfortable as possible so that he could be the best son and big brother he could. Hey guys, it's Ella. I hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, or 2 a.m. sleepless binge. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and the background noises weren't too bad. Apparently my neighbours have decided that any time that I sit down to record is the perfect time to let off fireworks. So, sorry about that. Hopefully they aren't too distracting. Whilst we're here, I guess I should probably tell you to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to be notified when I make new videos. Is this an outro? I don't really do outros. It feels very YouTuber TM, which I don't really feel like I am. But I have been spending the last few weeks just constantly listening to other podfickers, and everyone else seems to do them. Should I? Or would you all prefer it if I just shut up?